Thanks. And I think one of the best ways to get into those questions that you bring up is to actually get Shahar and Brody to reflect on something that Vicky's already talked about, which is what does China want out of this relationship? So Shahar, what do you think China's goals are?
Well, to say that China wants something assumes that there is one China, but actually, as Vicky said herself, we're talking about multiple, well, obviously many people, multiple organizations operating at different levels. We have provincial government, we have state-owned enterprises, we have the government in Beijing. Within that, there are a lot of divisions between different agencies. Now, there are ways in which these things can be, to some extent, coordinated, even directed in some instances. But a lot of these organizations have their own interests. Sometimes these interests are competing, and sometimes these competitions play out internationally because they operate with considerable autonomy in many issues. So I guess the question is, what China wants in a relationship with Australia, I guess depends which part of China you're talking about. Because some of the greatest critics of China in Australia are actually the greatest myth builders on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, because the way that they imagine that China operates and the way that they talk about China, in a sense, feeds into the own mythology of the Chinese Communist Party of itself as basically like God, omnipresent, omnipotent, everything just happens the way they want it. This is not how things work, right? So we need to be very careful about that. So when we talk about how China engages with Australia today, we need to be careful not to assume that all of these things come from some kind of brilliant strategic plan that someone has come up with and is now being implemented. And if we even just talk about things like the increasing trade restrictions, clearly there is an agenda at play here. We don't know exactly what it is. But at the same time, there are a lot of other things that are playing out. For instance, the Chinese agreement with the United States, which requires them to purchase more commodities from the United States that might be competing with us. So it may not be so much about something that we've done, but about different things that are playing out. So we need to be careful, analytical, and very focused on precisely what aspect of the relationship we're talking about. We need to develop a capacity. We just spent, several weeks basically doing nothing else but looking at the American election. People know every district official from Georgia, but no one can tell you anything in Australia about how the Chinese party state works. That is what we need. We need to understand how that works. You said it's the elephant in the room, in the bed. We need to understand how to be in the bed with that elephant, because that elephant is not going anywhere. And hopefully we're not either.